Gracecity Youth, we are so pleased to be here with you guys for another awesome Friday night. We have a lot of things coming up, and one of those is Easter. And we are so pleased to announce that Gracecity Youth will be hosting an overnight Easter camp experience here at church. It's going to be so much fun and so awesome, so make sure to invite your friends along. We're going to have some great speakers, some awesome worship, a classic Batch and Beats performance, and so much fun games and activities. It's going to be great. So make sure, if you're interested in coming, to register in our Insta bio. There's a link in there. But anyways, today we are starting a series called Prism, looking a bit about Easter. So let's check out the bumper video. Today, I want to start by sharing something that most of you probably don't know about me. So when I was 16 years old, I got told I had this thing called scoliosis, which is basically a curvature of the spine. So spines, they're obviously meant to be straight, right? But mine had such a bad curve that it was at 70 degrees, which is very bad and was starting to become quite dangerous for me. So I had to have surgery on it, and thankfully, now it's all fixed. And looking at me, you probably wouldn't know that this had happened. And that's because we can never really know everything there is to know about someone just by looking at them. And I think we all have things that no one or not many people necessarily know about us. And this got me thinking about all the things we don't know about each other. So this week, we posted a question on social media saying, what's one thing that most people don't know about you? And honestly, we got some very interesting answers. And I think we all have things about us that no one really knows about us. We all experience loneliness at times, though. Whether you have close friends or acquaintances, or maybe heaps of communication, or maybe just a few texts here and there. But nevertheless, there are times when it is easy to feel like, one, we don't really fit in, but also two, that no one really knows us. In fact, there's actually research about this. Just a few weeks ago, I read this survey, and on the day of the survey, 40% of young people who did this said that they felt lonely or disconnected from others most of the time. Think about your classes at school and picture 10 people, and at least 4 out of those 10 feel disconnected most of the time. Just really think about this. But kind of think about it this way as well. For most of us, it can feel like there's often a barrier between us and other people. I mean, sure, we can hear what's going on from the people over there. It's just a little barrier. We can see people, but there's still something between us. Or between me and everybody else is what it sometimes feels like. And with that said, I want you to know that 2 things are true. So that's one, everybody feels this way. Like literally everybody feels this way. Maybe it's the popular person, they'll still feel lonely and disconnected at times. The person with lots of friends, them too. The dating couple, yep, single people, them as well. And this isn't just a teenager thing. Every adult would tell you that we experience it too. The feeling that we're disconnected or somehow separated from others is pretty common for most humans. And that way, number 2 actually, we're all pretty sure that it is not supposed to feel this way, right? Isn't there something in us that feels like we're not supposed to feel disconnected from others? Something in us tells us that we're not meant to live feeling alone or like an outsider. I can't really explain it, but I know I can definitely feel it. We weren't created to live like this. Sometimes we can feel that way about God too. For some of you, maybe you feel or you have been taught that God is close and He cares about you. And maybe others of you have been taught, or maybe just felt like God is really far away or distant or maybe even cold, which isn't helpful when you're already feeling disconnected from everyone else, right? The idea of Jesus sounds nice, but let's be honest. As incredible as it is to know that Jesus died on the cross for my sins, it doesn't always feel helpful when I feel disconnected and far away from everyone and kind of feel alone. It doesn't make us feel better when we want to be known and feel connected beyond surface level interactions. When you take another look beyond what you know about Jesus on the surface, there is more than meets the eye. Not to mention, a lot of people have ideas about who Jesus really is and why he came to earth. Those conversations, they come up a lot, especially around the time of year we're starting to come close to, Easter. And that's because Easter is when we celebrate the moment and the meaning of Jesus' death and resurrection. So to kick things off for this Easter season, we're going right to the moment, the end of Jesus' life. But first, I want to take a look at the culture and community that Jesus actually lived in. So Jesus, he lived in ancient Israel and grew up as a first century Jew, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that the people Jesus was around every day, they were very religious. And a huge part of their life for them was this building called a temple. We're going to talk about this temple for a moment because it will help us see something incredible about Jesus later. So the temple was basically the core of the Jewish religious life. However, religion was a part of all aspects of their lives. What they ate, the rules they followed, how they dressed, how they treated other people. Because of that, the temple wasn't just a building you went to occasionally, like a church or a hub for a culture. Different parts of the temple were for different people. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of what this was actually like. So if you weren't Jewish, you had to stay outside the whole area. Women, even if you were Jewish, could only go so far in. Jewish men could go inside, but certain places in there were off limits and they weren't part of the religious order. Kind of like being on a really special part of a staff team. So priests could go in most places, but only kind of on certain days. This whole thing was built so that people kept their distance from the center of the temple, a place called the Holy of Holies. It was sectioned off by a curtain. In fact, even the most important priest was only allowed to go behind it one time per year, because this area was a reminder of God's presence in heaven and on earth. And the curtains represented separation between God and humans. It kept what was sacred. The point is, the culture Jesus lived in had a lot of separation. That sense of disconnection, it wasn't just a feeling for the Israelite people, it was a physical reality. People were separated from each other, and they were separated from the place that represented the presence of God. So how do we get from that to Easter? Many Jewish people hoped that Jesus would help the Jews conquer their Roman oppressors by leading an uprising and trying to gain power. Instead, kind of the opposite happened. The Romans arrested Jesus for made-up reasons, took him to a shady kind of court system that framed him and then sentenced him to death. Matthew, a close follower of Jesus, reported what happened next. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. They offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. And it's from Matthew 27:33 to 37. If you're not sure what crucifixion is, it was an ancient form of torture that the Romans used not just to kill people, but actually also scare everybody watching, and in a pretty public way. It was awful. Not only was Jesus brutally murdered, but the people who did it mocked and insulted him in the process. As he died, check out what happened. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. So you remember that curtain, the one that separated God from everyone else. It was ripped in two. It was torn from top to bottom. How did God do that? I'm going to be honest, I have absolutely no idea. But what I know for sure is that the message was clear. And that's that the days of separation were over. In one moment, Jesus, he changed everything. He made it perfectly clear what his life was all about until that point. There was now no separation when it comes to you and God. No curtain, absolutely nothing between you and God. You may feel distant from your family or your friends, but God is always close. God, he's always there. You may feel like other people don't know you or want to be close to you, but you know what? God does. You may feel like you have to be good or well-behaved around God, but you don't. Nothing you do or don't do can separate you from having access to the God who loves you. Jesus, he turned the world upside down. He defeated death and he tore the curtain from top to bottom to prove to us that we were meant to be close and not separated or alone. So the truth is that you can be close to God. As for today, what does this idea of Jesus closing the gap of separation mean for us? So for some of you, this idea may be totally new. You may have never considered closeness with God something you could experience. You have only ever experienced God as distant, far away or cold, and kind of unreachable. But today I want you to begin to reconsider what Jesus' life and death proved to be true. And that's that you can be confident that because of Jesus, you can be close to God. And for those of us who are followers of Jesus, it's our job to treat other people like they can be connected to Jesus as well. In the same way that you may feel disconnected, other people have times when they feel alone, unknown, and unloved too. You and I, we have an incredible opportunity to let them know that they can be close to God as well. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we have small groups. So we can remind each other that even when we feel disconnected, there's no separation between God and us anymore. You can be close to God. Will you still long for good community and friendships and relationships? Yes, because that's how God wired you. For other people, and that's a good thing. Those relationships are important and we should pursue them. But God is close to us and understands even better than people can. Our own emotions will tell us that people don't get us. And when those things happen, let them remind you that you have a God who wants to be close to you and who has made a way for you through Jesus so that you can never be alone.